on the agenda tonight, we have 3 resolutions, including a public hearing, and we also do have 3 presentations. So we're going to start off with physical impacts with the Hermantown Data Center. Chad, do you want to introduce this, or do you want just Todd to come up and... Okay.
Not right now.
Well, I was going to do this presentation, and then we'll get into the public hearing.
I like it. You ready?
Yeah.
Thank you. Council members, Todd Hagan from Ehlers & Associates from downtown Minneapolis. We are the city's public finance advisors for bonds and tax increment, and tax abatement, business subsidies, financial management planning, utility rate studies, and the like. Always doesn't not work for developers. We work for the city and the EDA, and we run the numbers as best we can from what we get from the staff and the information we have. We put it into our models, and we run the numbers. And so our job at Ehlers on this project was to keep up with Chad, and it's been kind of moving as we went through the project, and I think we've got a public hearing tonight, and so my presentation is really to talk about sort of some of the background of the tax abatement, and then kind of get into what the terms are of the abatement, and then tax impacts, or what this means not only to the company but to the city going forward. And it's really just the city side we're talking about here. There's some benefits and maybe some participation from other taxing entities, but this is the city right now, and I'm up for any questions or comments you have of me, and I'm here all night, so all good. So the first slide I've got here is tax abatement background. And tax abatement is a very flexible tool. We've heard of tax increment before, and it really didn't fit. This project did not fit in within the tax increment guidelines of the state of Minnesota. It gives us it's storage, but it's not like grain storage, right? It's not physical something in a warehouse or whatever that way. The state of Minnesota really has to kind of catch up with the times, and so tax abatement is sort of our go-to for projects like this. Also allows us to go out more than like 9 years or so, like tax increment would. And it's kind of a simpler project with the process to establish at the onset, but it is going to take some math as we move forward, because the city and with our help too will have to calculate the abatement every year as we go forward. Because the idea is not to spill over to the general taxing payers, right? It's just supposed to kind of stay within the project, be revenue neutral. So it does require approval from each participating jurisdiction. Again, we're just talking about the city tonight. Maximum term is 20 years on abatement, and we have to go through kind of a notice period in a newspaper, and that's all the notice is kind of newspaper publication, and then public hearing is required. I believe that's tonight at the council level. Adopted by a resolution after the hearing needs to include the terms. Sometimes a resolution is its own term sheet in some respects, so there'll be some details in the resolution. And the statement of benefits would have to be at least equal to the costs of the project, and the public findings are that it's in the public interest as we move forward here. We did also do some math on to see if the city of Hermantown's abatement that's proposed will be within parameters, right? So that's kind of where we go to tax increment first, because there are annual parameters that we have to meet for tax abatement in Minnesota. And so a smaller town would have a little bit more difficulty doing this than a larger city like Hermantown with more value at the onset as well. $200,000. In Hermantown's case, it's the 10% of the net tax capacity. So just what is net tax capacity? I'll bore you with that. So that is the taxable market value of a piece of property multiplied by the class rate. And it's kind of the Minnesota two-step when you calculate property taxes in Minnesota. The first step is to derive the tax capacity, and the second step is to multiply that net tax capacity by the tax rate of the city, and that's the second step. So there's 2 steps in deriving the property tax. The slide I'm looking at here right now is the data center terms. The city abatement is slated for the first, to keep the first $100,000, which won't be abated for this project. And then the company gets 85% of the new city taxes off of the new development. The base taxes stay there. I'm not taking anything away from anybody's budgets. The county, the school, the city. This is all brand new value going on at 85%. And the 70% is sort of where, or 70% of the city's abatement capacity. So if we wanted to be mindful when we move forward that we don't run afoul of that maximum 10% net tax capacity. And that's not to exceed $80 million. So we are kind of in a little box here, which is fine. It keeps us all in check as we move forward, and it just keeps that abatement from not running us straight, basically. The project slated for up to 3 phases are pretty much the same square footage. First phase has some office space in it, but the rest of them are pretty much the same square footage as we move forward for every 2 years. At least $650 million is invested per phase. Lots of equipment in this, right? So we talk about property taxes, we talk about real property, not personal property. So there's going to be a big sort of difference between what goes in there and what sort of they build it for and what it can be taxed at, which was a challenge as we move forward to get to see what comparable type buildings we can use for estimated tax value, right? Which was a challenge until I think we finally got it figured out with the county assessor. Phase 1 will employ at least 40 new full-time equivalents at 120% St. Louis County weekly wages, somewhere north of $75,000 per year, 2026, and then beyond, we don't know. Probably go up with the cost of living. And the future phases will employ at least 30 FTEs each. This will qualify, well, it is subject to being a business subsidy in the state of Minnesota. So any kind of granting of assistance over $150,000, which isn't much in Minnesota, we need to abide by the business subsidy law, which requires annual reporting to the state for each phase, basically wage and job goals, which will be achieved within 3 years of construction, and all FTEs, full-time equivalent jobs sustained for 5 years. So there's some teeth involved in the agreement that way, and it's also required by state statute. Next slide on the data center assumptions by phase. Again, we talked about 3 phases. First phase, again, they're pretty much the same, except for we've got some square footage of office on the first phase, and then we're going to also increase the value, right? So there's some inflation that the each building will not be probably built for the same cost as we move forward, because it costs a little bit more to build every year. Plus as we go forward too, the value of that facility may increase every year by some inflationary factors, so we put some of that in as well. That seems to vary from state to state, so how they look at these buildings, if they can be repurposed afterwards and not just be a data center forever. If walls can be moved and things can be repurposed at the end of the day, you've got a building that may be able to be repurposed, taking out all the technology if that happens down the line. So the projected additional net tax capacity of $2 million, a little bit north of $2 million in 2029. So 85% of the city abatement that goes to the company equals about $11.5 million over 20 years, and that's a present value. number, so the value of, it's a time value of money. The money, a dollar today is worth more than a dollar 20 years from now, so it is present value at about 6.5%, kind of like a home loan or a car loan or what have you too. So the abatement is generated, it gets paid every year, but actually it's sort of worth 11.5 million today. As we move forward then with inflation and the like, then the net tax capacity, which will be less the office part of the facility, is a little bit more than $1.8 million in page 2031, and these buildings are 2 years apart. And 85% of that is $10.6 million over 20 years of present value. And then phase 3 projected at NTC at $2 million. In page 2033, 85% of the city's is $11.4 million over 20 years at present value. So the next slide talks about the limit that we have to abide by, right? So if so in the city's financial management plan, which we're working on as well, there are a lot of things that the city needs to do. Within these years, we isolated 2026 to 2033, right? So there's a lot of sort of appreciation going on in just the city's base net tax capacity. Anyway, we assume 5% increase in the existing tax base annually for what's there now and for new builds historically. The city continues to grow, not just because of this project. Also, we added in the 3 phases in 29, 31, and 33. That's net tax capacity, remember, that's taxable market value down to class rate. It's sort of this fictitious number that we derive property taxes from. And you can see that that continues to grow. The 10% limit is on that line as well to make sure that that's sort of the mark that we want to be under. And then we also add in 2 tax abatements that are in the city already for Fleet Farm and Pillars down the road here. Also, that's part of the tax abatement program, which is a part of that 10% limit. And then we've got the remaining tax capacity there, and then we start, then we sort of add in those 85% 3 phases there as well. So if you look at the last line there, we're under the 10% limit, which is good, and that's part of our calculation that we and part of the terms, right, to kind of stay under that with some cushion, right, because we might need to use tax abatement in the future as well. The city uses it for its own city projects as well. So we're good there with that test. Next page on the additional tax levy. It's like, what does this mean to the city of Hermantown in numbers, right? Want to just kind of convert this into levy dollars instead of tax capacity numbers. So this assumes 85% of the tax abatements for each phase, which means that the city retains 15% of the levy, the new levy that can come on that's not abated, right? And it's kind of where the benefit is, I would think, for the county and the school district as well, with different numbers. That's sort of what we're looking at for benefit, right? That's how we derive the benefit. So all things being equal, the city's got a tax class or a tax rate of 46.515%. And like I said, there's a lot going on in the city and our financial management plan. So I needed to isolate that number just to kind of stay the same, right? All things being equal, the city tax rate stays at 46.515%, which is how much sort of tax levy loads on the net tax capacity right now. It's only less than 50%. We look at the remaining 15%. You subtract the 85%, the remaining 15% is that last line, the remaining tax levy available. And this is on an annual basis after 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33. You can see it continues to grow, and that's annual tax levy capacity that we can put on. The city can put on, keeping that rate the same. You can use that to finance other projects or to pay for other projects in the city. So that's kind of what that 15% means for the city as a whole. So after 20 years, it all comes back on it, right? That sun seems like a long ways away, at least for me, but too young. That's kind of just a turning page, right? So after that, if everything kind of stays the same, the city, the county and the school district, the city and county, they reap the benefit immediately. And we know the school district will because they are not part of the program, right? So that's something that they're looking at as an advantage for them. If they're thinking about some large project or whatever, this capacity at 100% will come right on for them immediately. We'll have to wait, and then we'll get 15% at the onset, and then the county, that's to be determined. So that's what I have for you folks. And maybe I sit down, we have questions and answers later, or we have to leave it now.
Well, do you have any specific questions at this point?
I have a quick question. I know when you started, you said you were focusing just on city.
Yeah.
Do you have projections of what the total tax bill would be after total bill of all the taxes paid for city, school, state, county?
Total tax, say that one more time, because this is.
What would be the anticipated total tax bill that this new development would pay every year?
I can calculate that for you if I sit down. Maybe I can kind of do a little bit. I do have all my sheets with me, and maybe I can just add them up for you.
And again, yeah, we're talking city here, but I just want everybody to know the total impact for the loan taxes.
Yeah, I'll check that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You were talking 3 phases and 20-year for the tax abatement. 2029 is first phase, 2031 and 33. So that 20 years starts in 29, 31, and 33.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, starts at age 20. Right.
So each one is a separate.
20. All right.
Well, this is what we're going to do. You can sit down and look at that, try to answer that question. We're going to take a break from the data center just a little bit. 2 presentations, the other ones that we have. Because I know this is a big project, but we do have other work that's going on in the city as well. So next, David Wolf, we're going to do section 14 updates. Again, the data center is a big project. There's a lot of people interested and concerned about it. It's an important thing that we need to continue that process. In the meantime, we're also doing other work. And we have been working on the improvement, Lightning Drive in the city's industrial park there, business park, and extending the sewer and water there for a couple of years. We're getting really close to having the plans done, so David's just going to give us an update on that project.
All right. Perfect. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
So this is what we're referring to as a Section 14 project, and it's in Section 14 of the City of Hermantown. It is in our industrial park where the Public Works Department is, and that's on Lightning Drive, under Chief Lane and Dutchell Road. So the map before you is kind of the project limits. Again, it's Lightning Drive, Thunder Chief Lane, Dutchell Road, and then we have some off-road utilities and trail associated with this project. So I want to go back just a little bit, give some history, and then I'll bring you up to speed of where we are with the project. So in 2015, we inventoried all the streets within the city, and we ranked them 1 through 5, and Lightning Drive and Thunder Chief were ranked towards the lowest grading or worst condition roads that we had. And we initially had projected to improve these roads in 2018, and because of other opportunities, partnerships with the counties, other grants, and other priorities, this project had gotten pushed until now. So fast forward to last year, we were able to secure a couple of different grants for trails to connect the rest of our trail system. So that's part of this project. The other part of this project is the utility piece. We have a water main extension we're doing. We have 2 lift stations that we're going to take offline and reverse the flow of that sewer and bring it to the west to our trunk line, and then the trail piece of this. So this next slide is an overview of the project, and so we'll start with the green line that you see. That's the sanitary sewer. So again, that's going to start on Lightning Drive at Stebner Road, and we're taking that pipe and we're going to reverse the flow and bring it back towards the west to the trunk lines. Then there's a blue line, and that's the water main. So when we do the work on Lightning Drive for the sewer, it's going to cause us to have to redo the water main just because of the depth and the rock. So we're replacing the water main on Lightning Drive, and then we're, on a water main system, we always like to create loops for redundancy in the system. So we are going to connect the Lightning Drive water main to the water main on Maple Grove Road, so new water line down Getchell Road. Then we have the roadway work. That consists of Lightning Drive, Thunder Chief Lane, and Getchell Road. And then the last piece of the project is a trail. So that trail will start right down here at the corner of Maple Grove and LeVay, go up LeVay, and then go cross-country through our sewer easement, and then connect to Lightning Drive to Stebner, and then Stebner down to Maple Grove. And then it will connect to the trail system that we did a few years ago with the county. Next slide, please. So this next slide is just a typical section of the road. And so, I don't know if you can zoom in, go to the top one, but basically what we're doing is this is going to be a 32-foot wide road, so very similar to the Ugsted and Stebner roads that we recently reconstructed. We're going to have, our trail is going to be on the south side of the roadway. So the south side is opposite of the Public Works facility. And then we're going to put sidewalk on Getchell on the east side of the road. So the side where the non-church and non-resident side of the street, I'm going to put a sidewalk. So effectively, if you're on the sidewalk on LeVay, on Maple Grove, you can now be able to take it up Getchell and get into the trail network system. Next slide, please. So we'll go through these next 5 or 6 slides quickly. But where we're at on the project is we had a 90% meeting with our consultant Bolton and Mink a couple weeks ago. Staff gave them feedback, so they are finishing their plans to bring to the 95-100% level here in the next month or two. So, Joe, I think you can just keep fast forwarding through these slides, but this is just an example of, the top is the plan view of the road, and then the bottom is what we call the profile, the elevation of the road. So if we can go to, I think it's sheet 11. Yes, perfect. So this is this exhibit here has 3 viewports. The top viewport is the trail system, so on the left you have a bay, and we go through the woods, through our trail easement, we get over to Lightning Drive. The center one is Lightning Drive, and then the bottom are Vetchel Road and the Southern Road. So what this is showing us are the wetlands. The green is the wetlands that we had delineated. The orange is the permanent impacts, and the gray are the temporary impacts. So in this 90% effort, we're dialing in those numbers, and then we'll be working with the CAP and permitting for that part of the project. Next slide, please. So this this next slide here, as part of this effort, this project, there's various easements that we need to secure as part of this effort. So the green are parcels that we're going to get temporary easements from, and then the gray are the permanent easements. So we have about, I think it's 9 different parcels that we're getting easements. So been working with our sub-consultant to secure those. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the cost. So what I did here is I broke it down into different segments just for the benefit of seeing how much each segment costs. So 6 different segments. The first 2 are the road reconstruction costs for Lightning Drive, Thunder Jeep Lane. The third one is the sanitary sewer replacement. The 4th is the reconstruction of Getchell. 5 is the multi-use trail, and 6 is the water. So similar to when we prepare the feasibility studies in the front end of these projects, we estimate the cost, and then we also have to assign how they're going to be funded. So this table, the lower table, has a breakdown. So I've been working with staff and finance department on how this is going to get funded. So as of right now, this is the breakdown. The final number, final allocation fund may be a little different, but it's going to be very close to this. So a big portion of this is going to be funded through sales tax for the, anything related to the trunk sewer. We can use sales tax for water main improvements, and then the CRI is the Community Recreation Initiative. That's where the voters allowed us to use sales tax for part of the trail. And then we got a DNR grant that we're going to apply to the trail. The assessments are, there's 19 different commercial parcels that are, we have the ability to assess those, so we're working through that. Stormwater utility, there's a portion of the project we're going to fund through that. Streetlight utility fund, as part of this project, we're going to add streetlights along the corridor, so we have a utility fund that will fund that, and then the balance of all those would be from the general fund. So kind of a quick recap of 3 years of planning. So I guess with that, I'll open it up to any questions. Oh, I guess one last thing. As far as the schedule, we are going to get the plans complete, get the land, the easement acquisition, and get the permitting done. And once we have that, we will put this out for bids. Our goal is to advertise this sometime in July and get the sewer that's off-road done in 26, and then the balance of the project, the trails, the roads, do that in 27, and have this complete by November of 27. Okay, with that, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. I was confused. The road, the trail along Stedner, is it on east or west side?
On Stebner, it is on the west side.
On the west side, okay. So no trail, we wouldn't cross Stedner Mid, we'll go to the intersection and cross.
We are going to provide a crossing because there is sidewalk. And that's the other side.
And
And
then,
that will connect the Deerfield, you know.
is there going to be, like we talked last meeting, with signals and push button and flashing and,
If that's the request, yes.
that would be my goal.
But they will have, the people that live in Deerfield will have access to it at the controlled intersection at Stabler and Newton Road.
And then could you go back to the easement, there it is. Actually, that other one you're at, why don't we need any additional easements at the end of the green as you head towards Levain?
That's our sewer utility easement, so we already have that in place.
And we don't need a separate trail easement on top of that?
I've worked with our city manager on that.
Okay.
We've looked at it previous, I think we can include it, we don't.
All right, that sounds good, thank you.
If I remember correctly, and again, I went on top of my head, part of that don't we own part of that land along the lake because of the previous trunk line? I don't think it's an easement, I think it's actual ownership.
I don't know.
I have a question about the plumbing portion of the open access that side. The segment 5, the new trail, 1.3 million, is there a reason we're only using $500,000 of the CRI for that?
Yes, because that's, the CRI is being used elsewhere.
So that's what's left.
That's what's left. Okay.
This plan set will come to you sometime in the next 2 months. We'll ask you to approve it and authorize advertising for bids. Then we go out for bids and we'll come back to you 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, and then we'll work the contract.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Next is the much anticipated first quarter financial statements.
Mayor, members of the council, page 3 and 4 of your packet is a snapshot of our first quarter. Page 3 is our cash and investments. We'll run through this quickly and then see if there's any questions. When we talk about investments every quarter, SLY, right? Safety first, with the public's money, then liquidity. We want to have enough cash to pay our bills, and then yield after that. We look to get the best yield we can. First quarter, we ended with about $48 million. That's down $7 million from the end of December. Main reason for that is we have our major bond payment in January. That was $4.2 million. So that was a big sum of cash going out the door in January. So about $48 million in total. As we talk about, we ladder our investments. We've got a fully formed ladder through 2031. So through December 2031, every month we have a CD or some other investment maturing. Speaking of maturing, we have a large CD maturing coming up here in a couple of days. And so I reached out to all of our local banks, or most of our local banks. I reached out to our current bank, I reached out to Western Bank, Park, State Bank, and Gulf Bank, and asked for rates. Gave them all opportunity to give their rates. Our current bank had the highest rate, so at this point we're thinking of rolling that money over into another CD with that money. Questions on cash and investments, page 3. All right, well, page 4, there's, again, this is the first quarter. Expenditures to actuals, most of the page. We use it red line, yellow line, green light system, you can see, first quarter is always a little different because in January, we get a lot of bills that were actually December bills, but we get it in January, and so we're required to accrue those back into December, which then hits our 2026 bills. So 2027, every first quarter is a little late. So you can see, general fund wise, we're 16% under budget. A lot of that is timing of the first quarter. Also, Parks Department is not very active in the first quarter. So there's various reasons. So the first quarter is always late, and it's like that every year. So there's nothing to be concerned about there. Again, with our sales tax, you can see the two red dots. There's a lag, and so we've only received 1 month of sales tax. So we really don't even have enough to report on. So there's 1/12 of the sales tax that we are able to report as of right now. So no concerns, first quarter, everything looking good as far as expenditures. Questions on this page?
So Kevin, we collected 282,000 in sales tax in 1 month for the whole quarter.
Yeah, there's 1 month's sales tax, the original sales tax, and then the CRI is 140.
I think that should be a green light.
Believe me, it'll turn green. We think it'll turn green.
Again, that's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I understand.
Any questions on first quarter financials?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the public hearing for the proposed property tax abatement. We're going to walk through that process on how we would do this. First, we will have Chad present. I'm going to just turn it over to you, and then you can invite the other people to present. How about that? We're going to just walk through, this is the presentation that we'll have prior to the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mulder, Mayor Boucher, Council. Process, I'll go ahead and do some of the same presentation that I did last week at the work session. Some of the slides will be slightly different. We tried to hold them in over the course of this last week, even since the agenda posted, so there will be some differences. Of course, those differences will be made publicly available directly following. Also, and once I'm done, so before that presentation, or actually in conjunction with that presentation, I'll kind of walk through the staff memo and hit the high points that have been outlined for you in the staff memo, and we'll do that. I'll do the development agreement first, and then we'll talk about tax abatement and both the slideshow at that time while we're going through the staff memo, because they go hand in hand. Once I'm done with my presentation, we do have a Google representative here tonight, along with some of her consultant team. So once I've concluded my presentation, I'll then hand it over to the Google rep to come up to the lectern and give a presentation from their side as well. So without further ado, I suppose I'll jump right into the staff memo on the presentation. So the city, as I think everyone knows, has been working with the project proposer, Harmony Group, a Google-owned subsidiary, to evaluate a potential data center technology campus in Section 31 of the city. The project would be constructed in up to 4 phases, currently being considered for 3 phases, but could be up to 4 phases. With phase 1 having a minimal capital investment of $615 million. And each additional phase anticipated to have a similar level, if not more, due to inflationary pressure. I will note several outstanding project milestones require separate action from this body and from other committees. And each of those following actions, the development agreement would be contingent on those actions also being approved. Those milestones include, but are not limited to, the environmental review, so the NUAR process, the special use permit, right, the site-specific, project-specific conditions that would be approved as part of the land use approvals, the commercial industrial development permit, so the specific portions of that project that planning and zoning would make would make approval of, and the plat. Again, to reiterate, an affirmative vote on the development agreement and tax abatement agreement would be contingent on subsequent completion of environmental review and approval of all remaining permits. It was asked at the work session why we would bring this forward now and not wait until later. The reason from staff's perspective is we have heard resoundingly throughout this entire process to have transparency around what the financial considerations are in this project. What are the tax implications? What are the tax benefits? What are the tax negatives? Having a window into that. The way to provide that window into the financials is by having a development agreement and a tax abatement agreement that provides that lens. So from our perspective, that's why we are bringing it forward now, is because we have it ready and we have it mutually agreed upon. And so to bring that forward for public consumption and for council consumption. Should note also, city staff worked in coordination with three separate attorney firms on this. We did not work in a silo. We worked with Overham Law, the city attorney, Gunnar Johnson, local abatement and bond attorney, Freiberger, and we also contracted with DLA Piper, an attorney firm out of Chicago who specializes in data center contracting and land use. Just wanted to highlight that. So, the development agreement. The point of this development agreement is to establish the infrastructure obligations of each party and the conditions governing the performance of those infrastructure obligations and the regulatory commitments that the city has to support the project. So there is a timeline within the agreement that calls out any future and all future approvals that would be required for the project. Each of these special use permit, commercial industrial development permit, preliminary or final plat, or the AUAR, all again require separate actions from this and or another body. And I'll underscore this, this agreement does not obligate the city to approve those permits or any of those actions, nor does it obligate the company to proceed with the project. So what are the obligations? The company will construct all water, sewer, and road improvements at its sole cost. Working through this process, there's been a lot of public concern that taxes would go up as a result of this investment, that the cost of these improvements would be on the backs of the current taxpayers, and that is not the case. The company will be constructing all of these public improvements at their sole cost. Upon completion, the company would transfer that utility or the utility infrastructure over to the city. The road improvements, being county and state improvements, would be turned over to them as appropriate. The company would build, of course, the infrastructure to our standards that we have set and made clear, and the infrastructure would then become a publicly owned asset. The total estimated cost of those public improvements, inclusive of financing costs, is approximately $130 million. So if staff were to come forward and propose that we build this as a city, it would cost us about $130 million out of the general fund or general obligation bonds or utility revenue bonds or however we would choose to finance it. It would cost the taxpayer $130 million approximately to construct these improvements if they were needed publicly. As a part of this agreement, the city would lead any right-of-way and easement acquisition, but as per the agreement, we would not pay for those costs. The project would pay for those costs as well. So inclusive of right-of-way acquisition and the costs associated with that. The company also would post a security equal to 125% of the estimated cost of all those public improvements. So in the very unlikely scenario where they begin constructing those facilities and then walk away, we would have 125% guarantee that we could tap into and then finish the project ourselves. To note, through this agreement, the company is limited to no more than 50,000 gallons of water per day for operational use. Of course, there's an allowance for fire flow because we want to be able to provide them with the water in response to an emergency. Again, there was much concern about the water use as this project was being discussed. Contractually obligated to 50,000 gallons a day. If that use gets exceeded, the company would be in default of the contract, and we could call them into default if they did exceed. Also, the confidentiality piece through this agreement, the company does acknowledge that all of the information that they provide to us as the city is public data and can be accessed through the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. We have in the agreement a 10-day period where they get a chance to look at it, review it. Obviously, being in the industry that they're in, they're very concerned about confidentiality for trade secrets and those things. We would give them a 10-day period to review the data practice requests and look for those types of items. But they have obligated themselves and indemnified the city for any cost related to any delays and bears the risk of, or bears the litigation risk if disclosure is contested. So they're bearing the burden of any financial risk associated with delays on that 10-day window. Finally, again, as I mentioned before, the agreement allows for up to 4 phases. However, it's expected that it would be 3 phases, but they of course want to do right by the input and the community feedback we've received. But we do allow up to 4 phases under this agreement, under both agreements. The term of the development agreement is no longer than 31 years after the effective date, or until the termination of the tax abatement agreement, whichever is less. So if they pay back their tax abatement, or if they exceed their tax abatement forecast and they pay those off early, then it would the tax abatement would terminate, and in conjunction with that, the development agreement would also terminate. So now I'll start working from both the slides and my staff memo. I just covered the development agreement, which again covers the infrastructure obligation, who's paying for what and why and how. So now I'll flip to the tax abatement agreement. Just a reminder of why we do tax abatement and why the state has provided us with the statutory ability to do tax abatement. The reason is to spur local economic development, period. We have to satisfy one of a multitude of items, and the public benefit has to be considered to be greater. That public benefit is not directly tied to utilities. That public benefit includes direct and indirect impacts, economic impacts resulting from the investment. So just to clarify, community benefit isn't equal to just the cost or the infrastructure gain. It's also all the ancillary development that happens as a result of a specific project. So that is why the state provides us with the statutory authority to do abatement. This tax abatement agreement would induce, at a minimum, $650 million of private investment. It's likely to be more than $2 billion, that's with a B, $2 billion worth of private investment in our local economy once all 3 phases are built. If it's 4 phases, it would obviously push more than $2.5 to $3 billion worth of private investment. With that, they also have obligated themselves to the creation of 40 high-quality employment positions. Some criticism around data centers is the limited number of positions that are created. Of course, there's always a balance between quantity and quality. These 40 positions that are at a minimum, 100 positions likely at full build-out, are high-quality technology field jobs that will pay more than $75,000 a year annually in 2026. And as those phases ramp up, of course, wages go up as time progresses, and so that minimum salary would increase with the time as well, to note. Further, these jobs would diversify and enhance the economic foundation. We don't currently have a whole lot of these kinds of positions in our region, and so this would provide an economic diversification. And of course, economic diversity is economic resilience, so there's some community benefit in that as well. So under the tax abatement agreement, the developer will pay all real estate taxes that it owes, and through the tax abatement agreement, the city will effectively dedicate a portion of the city's taxes to repaying the company for the public improvements that they constructed under the development agreement. So they pay their taxes, we take a piece of their taxes, and we give it back to them in exchange for their construction of the $130 million worth of public improvements. Lastly, I'll note before I flip to the slides, the school district, ISD 700, has declined in writing to participate in this abatement. The school will not be abating any portion of their taxes. The typical process, as guided by others, is we request that declination in writing, and then they respond to us in writing that they have declined to participate. That is not a statutory requirement that that be a public action. It just simply has to be done in writing, which did occur. So, flipping to the slides, a little bit plainer. What happens with Google's tax abatement? Again, they pay 100% of the property taxes. Following that, this is only the city's portion of the property taxes being considered tonight. Following that, the city keeps the first $100,000, as Tom talked about. And then the city would then send 85% of the remaining property taxes back to Google each year after they pay their annual property taxes, or until the payments reach a cap of $80 million in total. After that point, the city receives 100% of the property taxes. I'll say again, this is 85% of the property taxes that they create. This is not 85% of the taxes existing. This is the property taxes they create as a result of their investment. To note, even after the 85% abatement, so when we retain that 15% that would go to our general levy, Google will still be the largest taxpayer and larger than Walmart, Fleet Farm, Sam's Club, Menards, and Bass Pro Shop combined. So that 15% that we would retain after abatement is still larger than 5 of our largest commercial taxpayers today. So what happens with Google's tax abatement? If these agreements are approved, no residential or commercial taxes that are currently paid are returned to Google. They only get the 85% of what they create. No current commercial or residential tax monies are paid are lost in this potential arrangement, so we lose no money currently. And the school and city payments, as well as the infrastructure project, will be paid by Google regardless of the abatement amount generated. So if they only build one building and they only get 85% of the one building, they still are obligated to pay the full financial considerations outlined in the agreement, regardless of how much they create. Let me just check and make sure.
Chad, you just touch base on, I think we kind of skipped over the payments to the school and the city. Maybe you're getting there.
Mr. Mueller, we will get to that a little later in the presentation. I know I'm excited to talk about that as well, but we will get to that.
You referenced it in the amount.
Fair enough. I'll close that loop shortly, I promise. So we talked about the 85% and the retention of 100,000. So this graphic in front of you shows currently the annual revenues for the city collected from the project property. So those parcels that the project is being proposed on. Currently, they pay $28,000 a year in property taxes. After construction, after full build-out, with the 15% that the city would retain, that's just about $450,000 in tax revenue generated from the 15%. That graph there on the left shows that they would actually create about almost $3 million in property tax revenue annually. We would abate, that's after full build-out, year one of full build-out, so assume 2033. We would abate 85% back to them, and I know that seems like a big number, and it is a big number, but I want you to hold that thought, because as we work through that presentation, we'll do a summation at the end in comparison. If you capture the difference between what gets abated and in the red there, what is created, that $450,000, and then move it over to the graph on the right, which compares it to existing property tax revenues we have today from 5 of our largest commercial taxpayers. Bass Pro at the top, Sam's Club, Walmart, Menards, Fleet Farm, all combined still fall short of that 15% that the city would retain. All in all, over the expected 28-year term of those abatements, the city would would have a tax collection of about $12 million. Thanks. So, after abatement, $450,000 every year to the city. And then the school, because let's not forget about the school, every year tax collection for them because they are not abating anything, just over $1 million of tax revenue additional, assuming, of course, no change in tax rate. As Todd talked about, we have to stabilize $1 million in tax revenue every year to the school system. Thanks, Joe. So again, in comparison, this graph has a lot on it, but what it shows is the value of the abatement over time. There's been discussion about this. We talked about that $80 million cap at the top. The actual forecasts show that the abatement value is worth about $70 million over the course of the entire abatement. That can be misleading because that is not today's dollars. That is future dollars, time value of money. So the value of today, net present value, the value of that abatement today is $33.5 million. On the bottom left of that graph, you'll see where that $33.5 million is. That's today's value. The cost to construct the infrastructure in today's value is $130 million if publicly financed. If we inflate the cost of the infrastructure at the same rate as we inflate the tax abatements over the same time period, that public infrastructure at the end of the abatement period would cost $360 million to build. So if we're going to equalize, it's going to be $70 million in 2052 at a $360 million build cost. Today's value is $33.5 million in abatement value to $130 million in infrastructure construction costs. You'll also see in the bottom right, folks, you'll also see in the bottom right, it's important to note that during the terms of these abatements, phase 1 and phase 2 will waterfall off and cascade off. So we will collect full abatement value, the full 100% of building 1, or phase 1 because it's multiple buildings, and we will collect 100% of phase 2 during phase 3's abatement period. So if you recall at the beginning, we talked about that being the big tax number. That big tax number does come to us as they cascade off and then once they fully terminate.
So just to summarize here, just real quick, please. Present day value, $130 million in public infrastructure and $35 million of abatements. So 1/3 of the cost of the infrastructure would be paid for by tax abatements. The other 2/3 is simply being paid by them.
That is correct. Showing the revenue for the school over the 28-year term of the abatements. Year 1, once phase 1 is constructed, it's estimated they would get just shy of $350,000 a year in taxable value. At full build-out, as I mentioned before, they get just north of $1 million in taxable value. That's $1 million a year in tax revenue to the school district, assuming no change in tax rate. You'll see that continues to increase the same way the abatement value increases, the same way the cost of public infrastructure increases over time. So do the tax revenues for the school district. All said, at the final year of the term, just north of $2 million. In fact, it's $2.275 million worth of a single year tax collection from the school from this project, even with the abatement to the city. It's not on this slide, and we'll talk about it later, but that sums up to just about $30 million worth of tax revenue for the school district over the term of this abatement. Let me make sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, Hermantown, the abatement conclusion. What does it look like once these things start to roll off of their abatement agreements? 2052 final abatement agreement or the final abatement payment in 2052, Google receives $1.7 million on their Phase 3 abatement in tax abatement, and then the school and the city in exchange then receive about $13.5 million in tax revenue between the two of us. So you'll see the financial implications once the abatements start to roll off. As Todd had mentioned, 20 years to some of us, it seems a lot longer than it does to others. Once the abatements roll off, that they continue to pay those taxes, and we collect the full tax revenue from that. 2053 abatement concludes completely. School and city, $17.6 million in tax revenue. And then in 2056, the final school payment, which we'll get to shortly, goes out beyond the term of the abatement, the payments to the school. And so the full collection of revenues to the school and the city combined is just south of $20 million from this project. So I'm going to break it down in today's dollars, and then I'm going to do a comparison of today's dollars minus what we are getting. And actually, to Mr. Mulder's point, I don't think I actually talked about this because I'm working between two documents. Let me back up 1 second and mention that the school district, as a part of this agreement, will receive through the city, because this is a city agreement, so we have to collect. We can only have an agreement between the two of us. We can't obligate the school to do anything. They would pay to the school's benefit $850,000 starting the first year of operation. That $850,000 payment would then increase by $50,000 every single year for 28 years. So it would be $850 the first year, $900 the second year, $950 the third year, $1 million cash payment the fourth year, and so on and so forth for 28 years. That equates to a future value of $42.7 million to our school district. The payments then would be made to the city, and we in turn would turn around and give it to ISD 700, not 709. We would turn around and give it to them through a joint powers agreement. The city also would receive a lesser sum, but also cash payments of $150,000, increasing by $7,500. That term is only for 20 years, and the future value of that is just short of $4.5 million. So the total value of cash payments in future value is just north of $47 million in cash. Also to note, those payments to the school and to the city are unrestricted, so there are no strings, no obligations around those payments. Those would be up to us and up to the school on how they would spend those funds. So, understanding the fact that we are flopping between today's dollar values and dollar values in 2052, because that can be confusing, we put some slides together that kind of show the apples-to-apples comparison, because it can be lost in, we're getting an $80 million tax abatement in exchange for $130 million infrastructure cost. Again, not apples to apples. So on your screen, what we've done is at the same discount rate, so we 6.5%, same way we figured out the $33.5 million from $70 million. We arrived at 19.2 for annual cash payments between the city and the school. So today's dollars, $19.2 million in the cash payments, plus the $130 million in publicly financed public infrastructure cost. That's a total value of just about $150 million in value gained directly from this abatement package. Again, earlier in my presentation, I talked about how abatement, the community benefit of abatement also includes all the economic impacts resulting, not just the direct from the abatement package, but today we're just going to talk about the $150 million of value gained directly from the abatement package. In exchange for $33.5 million of abatement. Again, return taxes that they create through their investment in our community. So, $33.5 million gets us $150 million in today's value. You want to go to the next slide? To get a little deeper into the detail, if we subtract that $19.2 million in cash payments from the abatement value at present, at today's dollars, that results in just over $14 million in abatement. That's in exchange for $130 million of public infrastructure. If we subtract the 14 or so million dollars of abatement that we are providing less the payments, that leaves us with a net public position of $115, almost $116 million after abatement. I'll let that speak for itself. Going to 2052, the $360 million worth of public infrastructure we talked about earlier, and the future value of the cash payments subtracted, we are just north of $400 million worth of value gained directly from the abatement package. Same math, future dollars, $30 million plus the $12 million not the same math. That's $407 million directly gained. That's in exchange for the $70 million of abatement. And that we can also now forecast out what the tax implications of that are. Of $30 million in school taxes collected, plus $12 million in city tax collected for $42 million. So that's just about $450 million of financial gain in exchange for $70 million in future dollars. So wanted to do this so we can go apples to apples, because oftentimes today's dollars and tomorrow's dollars get conflated in these discussions. So the slide says questions. I know that a lot just got thrown at you. There is more to discuss in the abatement agreement as we roll through the memo. One thing we did not talk about in the slides is the 30% cap that we put on our net tax capacity. By statute, as Tom talked about, the city is only allowed to abate 10% of its total net tax capacity, so basically its entire tax base. This agreement requires that the project's abatement cannot exceed 7% of that, or 70% of our 10%. This cap ensures that the city retains 30% of its abatement capacity for other economic development initiatives, or financing for public infrastructure, or other allowable uses. So we've got two guardrails on this. An $80 million future value cap should not, or will not exceed, shall not exceed, and then the 30% of our, the 70% of our net tax capacity. As you saw on Todd's slides, as they bring projects on, our net tax capacity increases in partnership or in tandem with the value that they bring onto our tax base. Even with that 30%, so we now have in the future a fully built out data center campus. We are abating up to 70%, though they're a little more likely to hit they're not likely to hit that if you look at the tax models. But if they do, and they absorb all 7% of our 10%, that remaining 30% is still just about $300,000 less than what we have available today. So because they ramp on value onto our net tax capacity, we're staying at about the same level of ability to abate on other projects as we have currently. As we talked about, this agreement also places a hard dollar cap on the aggregate amount of all phases. That's anticipated to be $70 million, but we gave them in the agreement, we are recommending an $80 million cap. If that cap gets hit, abatements go most recently completed phase, those ones would be reduced first. The thing I'll say about that is this is not a guarantee of $70 million. It's not a guarantee of $80 million. It's not a guarantee of $33.5 million. There's no guarantee in this abatement. This is what we call pay-as-you-go abatement. So the only value that they get is at 85%. That's what we guarantee, 85% of whatever it is that they create. Okay? So if they create less, they only get 85% of that. We're not guaranteeing any future value. We covered all this at the time. Great. Abatement period, as we talked about, talks about 20 years per phase. So they have a stack. It's expected 2-year gap between the 3 phases. Expected, anticipated 3 phases. That 20-year gap again is because ISD 700 declined to participate. However, there is a 31-year across all phases, 31-year term on this agreement. So if they don't construct, to Councilor LeBlanc's question from the work session, if they don't construct phase 3 or phase 4 until 8, 9, 10 years from now, it can't go past that 31-year term. So if they only have a 15-year runway on abatement, they only get 15 years because the agreement caps at 31 years. Okay, further, we talked about employment. We talked about the 40 jobs plus the 30. We'll also note that there is a requirement within this agreement that they work 35 hours per week, and that work has to be conducted at the project site. So these jobs are created within the city of Hermantown. I will also note that these will be company and or subsidiary employees. It does not extend to contractors. It does not extend to affiliate contractors. These are direct employees. And they will be located here, not somewhere else. The last thing on the job that I will mention is that there is a phasing. So starting with the second tax year of the abatement period, if they don't meet their target of 40 jobs or of 100 jobs or whatever the phase might be, a direct reduction in commensurate to what they did not meet, their abatement would be reduced. So if they are obligated to meet 100 or to create 100 jobs and they only create 50, they then only get 50% of the abatement that was obligated to them. So there is a financial incentive to create the jobs. Also note that the $75,000 a year plus in annual salaries in 2026 dollars. Actually, I think it was run on the 2024 census. So, time value of money, 8 years from now, obviously those wages will be higher than the 75 because we tie it to the 120% of the county's average wage. A lot to consider. We talked about the payments. 850 escalating by 50 for 28 years, and I will note that 28 years does go out beyond the term of the abatement. So it's expected that the abatement will sunset in 2052 as they ramped on their phases. These cash payments to the school go out beyond that forecast. So it will continue to make cash payments even after the abatement has wrapped in the forecast. Yeah, that about concludes my portion. One other thing I'll mention. We did not make up the values. We work in partnership with the St. Louis County Assessor. So of course these are forecasted values. The assessor won't know what the value of the building is until it's constructed, and they can get some eyes on it and walk through it and actually estimate the market value. So everything we've done today is based on our best guess in partnership with submittals from the company, the assessor in partnership with Ellers, comparables. We've done the best amount of homework that we can, but again, all of this is just based on forecast, but it was in partnership with a lot of entities that are pretty smart. So that's the forecast. So now I'll pause. I think I'm happy to answer questions on any of that, if there are any, but I do know that the Google representative is very excited to come up to the lectern and talk. So maybe we'll have her come up, and then if there are questions for either me, legal staff, or the company, or for Google, we can answer them at that time.
Like I need another tissue. Good evening, Mayor Boucher, members of the council, city staff, and of course members of the community. My name is Liz Schwab. I lead market development and policy teams for Google's data center organization. I've been with the company for about 17 years. I live north of Boston in a similar hockey-obsessed town, and I'm based out of our Cambridge office. although spending quite a lot of time here in Minnesota these days. I want to start with a note of gratitude that a project of this size, as the city administrator made nod to earlier, takes up a huge amount of staff time, and so I'm thankful for all of the engagement. Far predated Google's interest in this project, in fact, for several years. Now that Google has confirmed commercial long-term interest in this project, we're excited to be in front of you tonight and moving forward through this process. I realize the business tonight is on a tax abatement and development agreement, but given that it's the first time a Google employee has presented in front of you, I'd love to spend the first few minutes on some context on how Google has operated data centers around the world for the last 20 years. If you go to the next slide. But first, what is a data center? All this conversation. We are basically large, high-tech warehouses for the internet. But instead of storing physical goods on a shelf, we have thousands of high-tech, highly efficient servers that run the digital tools, cloud services, products that Americans rely on every day. And of course, these things are a very rigorous operational machine. They take dedicated power, cooling, and an operations team that would rival a naval sub. Go to the next one. A few fun facts on here. Did you know 500 hours of YouTube video are uploaded every day? So when we talk about the increasing need for data centers across the United States and the world, it's because all of us continue to use more and more of these storage and digital services. And it's not just consumers, it's also businesses of all sizes, it's governments, it's institutions like universities, hospitals, financial institutions, emergency services, etc. And as I said, we're proud to have operated data centers for over 20 years around the world. We have 32 owned and operated sites across 4 continents. Each of these sites is customized to the communities where we operate. From the initial design, things like using canal water to cool our data center in the Nordics, or funding backup wastewater treatment systems in Iowa, or partnering with farmers in Nebraska on agricultural irrigation innovations. To the energy innovation, our sites power significant clean new energy generation, spearheading new capabilities in demand flexibility and distributed energy resources. To the community partnerships, we invest the time to understand how we can best contribute to local priorities like workforce, education, including deep engagement by our employees in the community. On behalf of my colleagues, we're proud of the value we bring to the localities where we operate around the world. Next slide. Speaking of these communities, here are a few examples. We have one of our oldest data centers in the Dalles, Oregon, in the upper left. A family of deer have moved into our site in Council Bluffs, Iowa, in the upper right. Our data center in Hamina, Finland, is a retrofitted paper mill. And then you can see in Belgium where we're co-located with a very large solar array. I show you these because it's often said in the industry, if you've seen one data center, you've seen one data center. Most Americans have never had the opportunity to see one, to walk around the site, to even be at the fence line, right? And so it's understandable why a lot of the misconceptions and concerns persist. For this site in Hermantown, of course, we have, as Chad and others have mentioned, a lot of future process in front of us. The aesthetics and the site design and plan will be a part of that over the coming months and years. And there will be, of course, plenty of opportunity for public comment. Next slide. Okay, this is working. This is inside of the data center. This is actually a Google Street View backpack camera. Walking around one of our campuses inside one of the data halls. I've actually never walked a data hall. They are very highly secure facilities and you need a business reason to do so. Apparently I don't have a business reason. Next slide. I also want to spend a moment deep diving on our sustainability approach. At Google, we're really proud to be a global leader in clean energy advancement and environmental responsibility. In fact, many global experts consider Google to be at the frontier of defining and setting increasingly high standards for how to be a responsible corporate actor in this space. We won't be using water for cooling in Hermantown, so I've kept my focus here on energy. That said, any interested members of the community or the council can check out sustainability.google/operations for more information and public reports than you would ever want to see on things like e-waste recycling, net zero to landfill, our circular economy program, our water replenishment program, and of course our energy approach. You can also check out google.com/data centers. But looking at the slide, if you bring your attention to the right on the timeline, Google has been the first large company to meet major sustainability milestones, including reaching carbon neutrality in 2007 and matching the energy used across our global operations with renewables in 2017. When we reached that 2017 goal, we said that was too easy. And so we've worked with global climate and energy leaders to establish a moonshot for ourselves of operating on 24/7, 365, around-the-clock, carbon-free energy in every grid in which we operate globally. This is an enormously complicated, technical, and practical goal. We're the first major company to set out to do this, and we plan to be the first to achieve it. I want to underline this because it's a big part of why Google is attracted to Minnesota in the first place. There are cheaper places to build. But the state should be proud of its 2040 100% clean electricity law and how it incentivizes our partners like Minnesota Power to work alongside us and achieve that goal. Now, our goals are 10 years more ambitious. That's okay. But what I hope you understand from that is the value of rowing in the same direction, right, with our utility partners and having a supportive policy environment to reach those goals. That is priceless. Next slide. Chad spoke about some of the benefits that a data center investment brings. I wanted to highlight some examples from Nebraska where we have been operating a data center for about 8 years. We have 2 operational sites in Council Bluffs and Omaha. We have another one under construction, but it really is not contributing to these numbers yet. As you can see, the economic activity that one of these campuses produces in the broader economy is huge. This $4.4 billion figure is an annual figure. That was just for 2024. We have over, well, it says almost, I know we're over 700 at this point, employees in Nebraska that run our sites. Just last year, we donated $1 million to the local nonprofits in those 2 communities. Our employees are also incredibly engaged in volunteering, so they actually get paid work time to volunteer throughout the year. It's 20 hours. All right, moving to our project here tonight. Chad covered so much in detail. I hope I'm not boring you again with the same numbers, but this project is really not just about building a data center. It's a generational investment. When we invest, we do it for the long term. As you've heard from Chad and see repeated in the numbers here, the project benefits and contributions to local schools and city services are significant. You might be working on different net present values, Chad, but I've got a $219 million figure here. Chad talked about the $130 million in the value of infrastructure that we'll be building. He covered some of these tax benefits. I've got the payments to the $42 million to the school foundation and $4.5 million to the city for community betterment payments here. One thing that Chad wasn't able to speak to us directly is, of course, the broader economic benefits. So we covered the direct jobs. The construction jobs are significant. So based off of the modeling that we have To date, which is still early, we project about 1,500 to 2,000 highly paid construction jobs at the site for an 8 to 10 year build-out period. The $4.4 billion figure from the Nebraska slide, this $688 million figure is analogous to that. That's our U.S. site average in terms of the site's contribution to the broader economic activity in a locality, in a state. One thing that we're also really proud of is that for every one job at one of our sites, we support 9 jobs in the broader community. So that is a mix of electricians, HVAC, maintenance, fiber and cabling. We're going to need some local companies to staff up and grow to support this site. That also includes hotels and restaurants, car mechanics, landscapers, right? Like you go down a long tail of additional needs that our project and our employees will bring. And before I move on from this slide, I just want to address head-on the question about why Google is pursuing a tax abatement agreement in the first place. I think it's important for the general public to understand that tax abatement is a standard practice for projects of this size. The investment level is so high, the tax burden is also an outlier. So the general practice of economic development incentive or abatement agreements allows projects to remain globally and regionally competitive, and is also demanded of us within our market to compete with our top competitors in the cloud space. The second piece of this is that they're an important part of the overall cost profile of a project. The very generous community betterment payments that are included as part of this package might not be possible at that level without this type of abatement. When you consider the full picture, our significant infrastructure contributions, the outsized tax revenue and job creation, the long-term boost to local economic prosperity, and the direct benefits to Hermantown, they far outweigh the cost of the abatement. Finally, I want to cover a few other sort of project facts as we know them today. Some of these areas are subject of common misconceptions or just misunderstanding in the public conversation. The first that we're really proud of is our electricity service agreement with Minnesota Power. So as part of our deal, we are committing to bringing 700 megawatts of new clean energy onto their system. We'll also be exploring demand flexibility, meaning that when the grid has periods of high stress, Minnesota Power can count on us to dial back our operations that strengthen their system. Through the modeling, we're estimating $600 to $800 million in estimated ratepayer benefits to Minnesota Power customers. In other words, Google is footing the bill for $600 to $800 million of fixed costs that would otherwise have to be covered by their general grid base. This can all be followed along with the PUC. I understand that would be taken up in the fall. We're also committing to a $5 million energy impact fund with Minnesota Power. We do this all over the country. It's basically a way to help accelerate home weatherization, other affordability initiatives like that can help bring energy prices down for our neighbors. Okay, moving on from electricity, other site details. So noise. We have to be compliant with state law, right? Minnesota Pollution Control Agency mandates a 50 decibel nighttime maximum and a 60 decibel daytime business hour maximum. 50 decibels, for those who aren't familiar, is often compared to a quiet suburban street or the sound of a refrigerator running in your kitchen. 60 decibels is sort of typical background noise in an office or a restaurant, often compared to a dishwasher or an electric toothbrush. You can look up your favorite comparable on a search engine near you and find your own context-setting example. While the final detailed site design plan is not finalized, city code will require very minimal to no light pollution. So fully shielded downcast light fixtures that eliminate spillover and glare to adjacent properties, and the 30-foot pole height maximum. City staff covered the water use. We will not be using consumptive water cooling for this data center. We will need it for bathrooms and employee break rooms, and so that's the figure you see here. And as Chad mentioned, it's limited in our agreement as well. Backup generation, this is often another point of consternation. So this facility will be running on what we internally call light backup gen. So that means we're not servicing critical cloud customers that demand to be running that 5.9 reliability. So think state emergency services or the federal government or a financial institution would demand that type of reliability. This site will not serve those types of compute workloads. So we will have a very small backup gen presence at this site. The other benefit here is that we are hooking in directly to Minnesota Power's Arrowhead substation, which I believe has a 99.99 reliability score. So that means we are almost never going to run these, with the exception of the manufacturer's required testing and maintenance schedule. And then, of course, just looking to the future, we always are excited when we get to the phase of hiring our local team. We need to make sure we're actually moving forward with putting steel in the ground first, but we do have a few roles open in terms of our community engagement, public affairs, and state level market development work. And of course, our operational teams, site leads, technicians, et cetera, will come very soon after that. Those jobs will be advertised locally. And we're, again, always excited to move into that phase. Next slide. I wanted to flash this up just to show a sense of the process ahead as we understand it. A lot of this, of course, is subject to change as we move through the process. We are committed to ensuring that we have ample time for community input, scheduling open houses, both in person and virtual, very open to council staff and community input in terms of what level of that is desired. And so I guess in summary, the decision before the council here tonight is whether or not this is a good deal for Hermantown. This is a big project. You're right to scrutinize it closely. Again, we're grateful for your engagement on this. We understand this is a big decision. Google is committed to being a good partner every step of the way, and again, ensuring that local leaders in the community has all the information they need to make an educated decision. We're grateful for your engagement, and thank you. Stay here for questions.
Any questions?
The number of jobs that is in a development agreement is 40, 30, 30. Are there indirect jobs, contract positions that are permanent on site?
Yeah.
And what will those levels be at each stage?
Yeah. So we generally have a higher amount in the early stages. So not construction, but those indirect full-time vendor jobs that might be in the hundreds. When you get to full kind of standard operations, we typically have a couple hundred full-time employees and a couple hundred vendor or contractor employees who have a badge. They show up to the data center every day, but they're employed by some electrician or HVAC or security firm. They're not a direct employee of Google. Obviously, we can't take credit for those positions, as was Chad highlighted, but that's sort of a standard practice.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the council? Okay, so that's how I envision the public hearing starting, and then we would take public input. Following that, we have the resolution in front of you tonight to approve.
John, I have one question for Chad. The $100,000 the city will collect up front on property taxes, regardless of that, does that count towards the 15%?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor Law, no. The 15%, the 85%, and 15% split is calculated after the deduction. So the 100,000 and the base tax of 28 get subtracted first, then we calculate the abatement thereafter.
Some of the legal questions. I have been asked, and when I asked staff, and I think it was referred to, the attorneys made the decision, but from one of the attorneys, can we explain why that both of these agreements are in one resolution versus normally each resolution has its own roll call and vote?
Councilor Geisler, I drafted that resolution and I put them together. You could certainly split them if that's in council's purview, but that was, they were closely related and so we did it that way.
Okay. And to me, it seems like one wouldn't proceed over the other. We're not going to do one and not the other, correct?
I would agree with that.
All right. Another legal question. We, the council received a letter from the opposition to stop the data center today, this morning. And one of the questions is that if the city approves the tax abatement agreement or development agreement before the environmental review for the data center is complete, that would fail to comply with Minnesota Rules 4410.3100 subparts 1 and 2. And I guess my question is that true? And if we approve this, are we at risk of some potential legal action in the future?
Councilor Geisler, councilors, I'm not going to get into legal analysis in a public meeting, but certainly this is a large project. There are a lot of pieces that are moving around. There are lawsuits already in play. As you can see from the room, there's lots of interested parties, and so there are some very difficult legal questions that the city and the company is navigating as they proceed forward with that project, and we will continue to work and coordinate on all of those.
Thank you.
One more comment. Unfortunately, my copy of all my notes of the tax payment agreement is sitting on my desk at the office. Exhibit I believe in the development agreement, had lift stations along Morris Thomas Road, and I thought we were routing 2 lines in parallel down the way road, one in each direction.
So, Mayor, Council, the question I heard was, the exhibit in the development agreement showed lift stations along Morris Thomas?
Yes.
That was an earlier version of what we were thinking the sewer could do, based on the latest discussions. The new alignment, the current alignment for the sanitary sewer goes up Midway Road to Arrowhead, and then Arrowhead to Lindall. And there's lift stations along that alignment.
Yeah, I guess that my question is more so, do we need to update that before we vote on it, or should it be updated? Can it be later amended? Will we have to do another public hearing to vote on the amendment?
Mayor Boucher, Councilor LeBlanc, there is language in the agreement that says that the exhibit is more of a placeholder as the, providing a full design detail within an agreement when, we were not even near like 10% design. It's really difficult, and as we continue to navigate, as the city attorney pointed out, more and more, this is a big complex project that is highly public, so things that would typically get worked out during due diligence are coming out earlier than they typically would. So there is a language in the agreement that says we have the ability to modify the alignment as necessary on public utilities as designed in this forward.
And I would add that the $130 million estimate that's in the agreement is based on the alignment going up midway to Fairway Road, not the alignment going down Morris House.
I guess I'm just more concerned with voting on the agreement that we have information that we know about abatement.
Given kind of leading into my other question, and given the fact that we haven't seen these agreements for a whole lot of time in front of us, is from a staff perspective, would there be a risk if this were tabled for some further discussion, perhaps work out the utilities and maybe some of these other legal things that we might be, is there any risk staff-wise that could be a problem if it was tabled and voted on at a later time?
If the council feels like you would like some additional time to review that, we don't want to rush this thing along and deal with questions that the council, and not deal with questions that the council may have, and or making sure that we do the sequencing relative to the environmental reviews as well. So if the council feels it would be good at this point in time to table, we'll look at that.
Turn back something you was going to have.
Yeah, certainly it's the council's decision on how they want to handle it. Your decision of whether to approve or not to approve or to table, that's the council's purview. And as we talked about, and as the presentations have said, there's a lot here. There's a lot of pieces. It's a big decision for the community. It's a big decision financially. So if the council, it's certainly something that's been discussed, is maybe we need more time to discuss this, and you can do that through a motion to table. And I've been reviewing my Robert's Rules of Order, so you would have, someone would make the motion either to approve or to turn down the resolution. The council could discuss it, and then at some point before you vote on the main motion, there could be made a motion to table that. And at that time, then the council would vote on the motion to table. If the motion to table passed, then the main motion is then set on the table until the council decides we want to take this up again and takes it back off the table. It could be as early as the next meeting in 2 weeks, or it could be many weeks down the line. That would be the council's decision when it feels it is ready to make this decision.
John, do you have any items in particular that you're looking for more information on that would prompt us to table it?
I guess I'm a bit concerned about the legality of some of the points that were pointed out in this memorandum earlier today.
I don't know if we have to do a similar process with every time we amend it. Are we going to have to go through public feedback and everything again to potentially putting ourselves in a similar situation to tonight repeatedly throughout the course of the year if we don't have to?
Well, again, if you have questions about concern that you feel that it would, it's fine. It's like, relative to, the amendments, it's like, we don't envision that there would be amendments at this point, but I mean, relative to those exhibits, it talks about, it's like, okay, this is the placeholder, inserted here will be the final plans when they're approved by the city council at a later date.
I'm a little confused on make a motion to either approve or deny, and then make a motion to table if we so choose.
You could simply table, but the idea is that you don't need to cut off. There's going to be discussion that the council's going to have today.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of input from the public, and you can talk about it, but then once that motion to table is made, under Robert's Rules of Order, you vote on that motion to table, and that takes precedence.
Does there have to be a motion to approve or deny before there's a motion to table? Or can a motion to table be advanced?
You could bring a motion to table, but once it's on the table, then the discussion stops. It's placed on the table. So it's kind of, think about how, I mean, obviously, it's something that's an option out there for the council. But the council may want to go through the process of discussing it for a while before they take that action to table, just to have that interaction, to understand kind of the issues that are out there. So if you have a little bit more time to consider it, you know what you're thinking about.
Typically, we don't discuss things until we have a motion. Are we suggesting that we, after the public testimony, that we could discuss it and then have the motion?
You could, and that allows you to discuss it. And then before you vote, there could be a motion to table.
We can discuss before the motion?
You have a motion.
We have a motion on the table to discuss.
Correct. The mayor.
What he's in charge?
And that is the answer. The mayor is in charge. He presides over the meeting.
I mean, is there any discussion that we're having that we can't have right now before we get to the kind of big moment?
We'll read that public input between
I was just wondering if Mr. Hagan has the answer to the question.
Okay, I understood it, but I didn't. So phase one, you'll have to multiply these by 3.
Okay.
And so phase one, let's say 2, I just want to kind of redefine the abatement, right? So there's total property taxes. Abatement does not capture statewide taxes. Okay, so it's not one to one, right? It also doesn't capture market value taxes, right? Like rent market value taxes that school maybe has. And small taxing jurisdictions, I don't know, sewer districts and stuff. Or the base value, right? Because we want to keep that still. So out of 3.2 million, let's say, property taxes total, we're probably at 2.5, right? Base. And then so out of that, we've got city, county, school. These taxes we're talking about here, we're talking 100% of the taxes. So with 2.5, the city's taxes are off of this. First phase is maybe 900,000, and then the school would be maybe 300,000 or something at the beginning, the very first year, right? Because it sort of inflates as these. And then probably the county is maybe 1.3 or something like that, ish 1.25. So they're kind of the total taxes, and then the splits. So what was your question?
Just
then you can
the total tax bill.
Yeah, it's kind of total tax bill for each jurisdiction. And then you just times that by 3 and kind of make the whole. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions relative to this issue? Just real quick, we got 10 minutes before the meeting starts. So you have accounts payable in the minutes, the consent agenda. And you have a resolution approving a special use permit for accessory structure in excess of 1,200 square feet. This is 37 level Sugar Maple Drive, gone through the PUC process, and they recommended that. There was Hermantown discussed at the PUC. Finally, resolution 47 is a utility agreement with Michael Canera Farrell, where we would install a backflow valve to make sure that Back to we've got a couple sewer lines.
Are we installing it or are we paying?
We're paying for it. We're paying for it.
From the contractor that gave us the whole
And then that auxiliary structure, accessory structure, that's on a separate lot from the house, right? But it was a double lot in the neighborhood.
Well, I've been told though that they were not allowed to build a house on that property, but now they've combined it and somebody can build a garage of 2,400 square feet. Whereas before, somebody said you can't build a house of 2,400 square feet, so any thoughts there?
Great, thank you, Mr. Guest and Mr. Counselor. So originally, when this was a separate property, there was a utility and drainage easement along the front of the property, as well as basically back in the rear of the property. So, again, my understanding this is more of an HOA issue associated with it, because of the home. Basically, the way it is we do not permit structures to be placed in those areas. Now, this proposed 2,400 foot garage or accessory structure falls within those two areas. It is not in any of those utility and drainage easements. Perhaps the house that was talked about earlier fell within those, and that was one of the rationales for it. But once again, we know it's an HOA issue, not a city issue.
And we don't get involved with HOA issues.
That's correct.
Okay, so we have 7 minutes before the meeting starts. We'll take a break and then we'll come back to you in 7 minutes.